Hi, my name is Mark O'Donoghue, and this is a little bit about the policy store reader, or policy reader we've developed from the CA support team. I'm from the APJ region of the Siteminder support team. Okay, so the Siteminder, the policy reader, what is it? Well, it's basically, the idea is to export XML files and export SMDIF files, and to give the user some ability to display them and navigate through them in a GUI usable fashion, rather than having to sort of do searches in a text file with an XML export component. As usual, the program's a work in progress. Part of this is a little demo to just explain some of the features, just so that it's easy to pick up. Hopefully it won't be too long. Okay, the reader, what can it do? Basically, there's two big parts to it, I suppose. One is the loading and displaying, sort of browsing, navigate and search, just all those sorts of things you want to do when you've got a policy store that's exported. And the second part is the fact that you can then compare XPS exports, so you can actually pick up one, compare it to another, and it'll show a diff format type of components. Okay, so what does it look like? Well, it basically looks a little bit similar to the old Siteminder applet, with 3 tabs, and there's but some differences, and also the fact that you can open up a number of child windows as well. So, okay, so if we let's have a little bit of a look at the reader, and we'll see what it looks like in action. So, when you get it, it'll come in a zip file like this. It'll be on the community site. Nothing too dramatic, just a jar file, a lib with a couple of other jar files in it, and run bat and run sh. Okay, so just run them, and it pops up a nice little window, which is empty. File open to grab this one. Now I've got a couple of extra samples in the parent directory, and we'll go for test.xml. Okay, on load it pops up a little screen with some summary information, the number of classes, number for each of the types of classes, and the child classes, and we'll also attach any reference errors that it finds when you load some policy stores. If they have voids that point to nowhere, it will add a link to those. You can see here the fact of how it looks a bit similar to the applet, with system application rather than domain and globals. The application, we have the old icon for domains, and the new icon is for apps, for the new application model, with roles as part of the component. And you can sort of navigate the tree as per normal. It will display properties for each of the objects which come from the XML import, and it will display child objects as well. So you can, now one feature that you can do is you can actually navigate by clicking. So here's, with these child objects, we can double click on that, and that will take us to the actual child. Another sort of little navigational quirk is the history, where we can sort of navigate back to and it just remembers the history of where we are. So if we click on the system tab and go to let's go to quickly check. Yep, there you go. Okay, so we grab a user store. In this particular case, we've got all of the properties for those, and we've got one attribute mapping as well. Lots of things for this guy. So employee. Now, so in addition to the properties which we've got here, we've also got a stats tab, which just displays some summary information, or rather actually detailed information, but in a spot that you can cut and paste it pretty easily. And the third tab displays all the references to it. So these are all of the references to this particular user store. So there's a couple of links from the transpolar and quote domain, and these other components as well. If we want to go to them, we just double click on them, and that takes us to the transpolar domain, the reference to that. So So that's nice. And if we're going to go back, we just do the history, and it doesn't seem to work when you cross over tabs. You need to refresh. Yeah, that'll be fixed, I'm sure. And so we're back with our references. So now, what a subtle different way of doing that would be to open that directory store in a detached window. Click on the references here, and now we can navigate to each of these. Just make it bigger. Yeah, so we can have a look and drift through each of those, having a look to see who's using it, and then we can use our back button to get us back to where we were. Right, so that's most of those components. One other thing that's is, in addition to properties and child objects, there's also attributes. They're hidden by default, but if we add them, then you'll see another table pop up at the top. These are the ones that are the XML attributes, so the XID is obviously one of them, and there's some other things here that come off as well. We don't tend to use these too much, and most of the actual raw policy data is in the properties and the child objects, so the kind of default for those is hidden, so that you can't, but they're there. Okay, so we've done the little browse buttons. You can also do finds, so we can look for just for my American spelling. Okay. Well, let's pick somewhere else. And, yep. So it won't match the current object you're on, but it will browse through. If we pick something really obvious, then it will match all of the agent in the in the value part of the objects. So yeah, so you can search through, and it's a Java expression, so you can get as funky as you like, and it will also match. Oh yeah, the later versions will. The slightly next version, one that will be on the community site, will actually match the XID value in there, so you can stick that in and it will match that. This one doesn't, it just matches on the property values. Okay, so let's find and then I think the only other, yep. So from here, those original stats on loading the policy store, they're available from the menu item there, so you can get them back if you need to. The other kind of interesting component is this one, the all objects. Here's a list of all the OIDs that are in the policy store. You can then use these filters to so that gives us the ability to knuckle out. You can also put your OIDs, it matches on anything in any of those columns. We can then double click on those and it will navigate the parent to it, or show entry does the same as double click, or opening window does what we did before, where it opens it up in a child window that we had before. So some of these ones screens have the option to show the OIDs. Generally it'll try and map the name, but if you want, sometimes you need to want to see the OID. And okay, so applications we've kind of covered. Fine, I think we're done. Yeah, let's just have a check. Okay. Right, so loading XPS exports, system apps and globals as the three tabs, similar to the old app, but the properties, child objects and the attributes, which are by default hidden. Navigating links by double clicking. Just for kicks we'll do that, so we can look at, for instance, a agent group, and then this has got the list of agents, and so we can double click on that and that takes us to the actual agent. The back button takes us there. The references tells us where that agent group is used, so we can double click on that and we go to that realm. So that's a sort of kind of component in navigating that we want to be able to do, just to easily browse around when you're looking. Okay, navigate the links, property table filters. Okay, the filters as we showed in the all objects, the filter text here, allowing us to do that, is a similar sort of filter operates on these tables here. So if we just grab, no, we don't want the global one. And I want references, so I want to know. Take, yep, realm. Okay, so here, for instance, in quote realm, we can use these filters. So you can see it applies to the tables as well as to the properties. Yeah, so just really in the case of where there's too many items in here and you want to narrow them down, they're just general filters. Yeah, so that's those. And okay, lists. Okay, so there's a list of all objects, the references, and being able to click and follow the references on that third tab for a user object. The viewing history, in addition to the back and forth buttons, there's a history menu that allows you to navigate directly to some of those objects in your history, or you can use the buttons, and then the basics text screen which we showed before, just the stats on the load. Okay, right, so that's the most common usage for us. Will be navigating in and looking at existing policy stores. But an option, particularly as a customer, that we really wanted was the ability to compare policy stores. So we would actually had a cron job that would kick off an SMOBJ export every night, and that gave us the ability to look back, and when someone complained about a problem, we could go back and look to see when that policy had last changed, or if the change that was made last night had affected their realm as seemed to be suggested. So the ability to compare different XPS exports was something that is a nice feature, and we'll probably develop a little bit further with those components. So the way to do it is we just open up a policy. We'll open up test app and the summary, and then we just do file compare to, and I'm going to compare it to test. These two are totally unrelated, so what will happen is that the added and deleted components will be most of the user objects, and the objects that are the same or some modified will be the system objects. Right, so we can see here that we have where things are unchanged, they're just left the same, so there were no variable types added. Where things have changed, they're bold, and where things have been added, they're in bold blue, and where they've been deleted, they're in red with a line through. So, yeah, and now that maps down the way to attributes as well. So if we pick up and have a look at some of the default ones, so for instance here we can see in the agent config, iOS default settings, the difference between those ones actually had some differences between those two XML files. This attribute was deleted, this attribute was added, these was deleted. So yeah, so it's fairly good to just visualize what actually is different, but particularly if you have a history of recording a number of ones from the same environment. So here for instance we can see we've added these two, we've deleted these four components, and yep, so that's them. Now here's an interesting one that's happened. This is comparing using the XID or the OID component. So we can see here like that we've actually deleted a Siteminder and we've added a Siteminder. Now what I'm going to do is we're going to look for those attributes again, and we can see here that the attribute for this guy 60E, and the attribute for this guy 014. So this Siteminder admin user has a different OID, and that's why it's considered as being deleted and added. I won't dwell on that too much, but what we'll do just quickly is that in addition, the main search is using OID, but one of the options is if we unclick that, then it won't use the OID to search, it will use name or a hash of the object properties to compare. So what I want to do just quickly is just redo that comparison without using OIDs and just using names. So let's open our test app again, close it, and we'll compare it to test. So now if we have a look at admin, we see that we've got one Siteminder user there, and we've considered him as being changed, and the change was actually his password, and the OID adopted for the thing was is the 2-1. So it's not comparing these attributes or considering those in the comparison, other than the OID, the XID value. So yeah, so those are the two major components. So just in one more, it'll do that to load an SMDIF file, just to show that it works. Yep, so just all the objects for SMDIF files are a little bit different. So, but apart from those, it's yeah. And then there is one option here that on load to map some of those to XPS names, but yeah, just to make some. But just for kicks, I haven't done this before, so it could fail horribly. We'll compare the SMDIF file to the XPS file, and we're getting a few doodaddys here. And this is the errors I was talking about that pop up with reference errors, and so they're rules. And we can have, like, just to show how we do that, you can pop that one up, we can look at the references, and we can go and have a look and see where that was. Look, most likely these are some artifact of the compare of the XID to the compare of the XPS to the SMDIF file, and not really a real error, but yeah. Anyway, but you can see mainly just doing that just to show that the compare is reasonably robust in terms of things. Now it would have done that mapping nulloids as well. It would have, yeah, mapping. Yep. Good. Okay. Let's have a look. See if we covered everything. All right. Yeah, so it's been a long time coming. It's about 3 years ago we were first sort of toying with the idea, and had a rough prototype a year ago that worked on SMDIF files, but fairly badly, or 2 years ago. And finally been able to manage it into something that's a bit more usable, with a number of kind of neat navigation steps to make it a bit useful. And also I think with the XPS stuff coming into play, and in support, us having to get a bit more involved in a lot of those things, it'll be quite useful. So, it's more stuff. So, yep, okay, good. Well, thanks very much. We'll, yeah, I hope you enjoy it.